I answered a call from my own number at 3:00 a.m. He knew just saying those words out loud was dangerous. He knew that telling this story meant dragging something closer, not just to him, but to anyone who listened. He hadn't believed that at first. Back when all of this started, this was just a weird glitch, something to joke about, something to shrug off and forget. But the truth is, some things don't want to be forgotten. They want to be seen, heard, noticed, and they'll use anything to get that attention, even your own phone. It began in the middle of winter, in a small rental house at the edge of town, the kind of place no one really looks at twice. A narrow two-story building with flaking white paint, a leaning porch, and a strip of dead grass pretending to be a yard. Behind it, an old patch of woods pressed right up against the fence like a black curtain. In daylight, the trees looked thin and harmless. At night, they were just a wall of shadow. He lived there alone. He had moved in a few months earlier after a breakup, telling himself the distance and quiet would help. The truth was that the silence only made everything louder. His own thoughts, the house settling, the hum of the refrigerator, the wind slipping under the old window frames. He had always thought he liked being alone, until he discovered what real solitude sounded like at 3 a.m. His name doesn't matter here. It's safer that way. He was just a man in his 30s, working a remote IT job, staying up too late, scrolling on his phone until his eyes burned. Pretty average. Pretty forgettable. That's why what happened felt so wrong. Things like this don't happen to people like him. At least, that's what he'd always believed. The night it started, he'd gone to bed around midnight. Heavy snow had begun to fall outside, muffling the world. No cars, no neighbors, no wind. Just that strange, padded silence that only exists when the world is covered in white. He actually felt calm. For once, his brain wasn't racing. He plugged in his phone, tossed it on the nightstand beside the bed, and crawled under the covers. The bedroom was small and mostly empty. Bed, nightstand, a cheap wardrobe, a lamp. One window facing the dark line of trees. He fell asleep surprisingly fast. It couldn't have been a nightmare that woke him. There were no frantic images fading from his mind, no sticky threads of fear clinging to his chest. He just opened his eyes, wide awake, heart already beating too hard, like his body was reacting to something he hadn't noticed yet. The room was pitch black. The curtains were drawn, so no light crept in from the street. The only glow came from the tiny red digits of the alarm clock on the far wall. He squinted at it, throat dry. 2:59 a.m. He didn't know why he stared. He didn't know why the number held his attention. Something in him waited for it to change, like watching the edge of a cliff crumble. The minute rolled over. 3 a.m. He didn't hear a sound. He felt it first, a faint vibration through the wooden nightstand, a tiny buzzing tremor that he felt in his arm before he realized what it was. His phone lit up. The sudden rectangle of cold light painted the room in washed-out blue. Dust motes floated between him and the glow like tiny, slow snowflakes. He rolled onto his side and reached blindly for the phone, blinking against the brightness. One line of text on the screen. Incoming call. Under it, the number. His number. For a second, his brain didn't process it. He saw the digits, recognized them, but they didn't make sense. He'd seen stories online about number spoofing and all that junk. Scammers pretending to be your own number to trick you. That had to be it. Some automated thing. A glitch. But then the numbers flickered. The digits blurred and slid out of place, like they were being dragged across the screen by an invisible finger. For half a heartbeat, they twisted into something else. Symbols or letters that didn't belong to any language he knew. Something like an I, split down the middle. Then, just as quickly, they snapped back into place. His number again. The phone kept ringing. He stared at it, suddenly aware of how quiet the house was. No heater running, no pipes ticking, no wind rattling outside, just the insistent ring. It felt too loud, like it didn't just fill the room but pushed against the walls. He told himself he wasn't going to answer. It was stupid. Creepy, sure, but still just a trick. He'd let it ring out, block the number, or ignore it and go back to sleep. But it didn't time out. It just kept ringing. 30 seconds, 45, a minute. It didn't stop. His skin prickled. He felt watched. Not from the window, not from the door, but from the phone itself. As if something on the other side of that call was aware of him, waiting for him to pick up. His thumb hovered over the screen. The ringing suddenly cut off. The silence that followed was somehow worse. He exhaled slowly, letting out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. His muscles loosened. He started to put the phone back down. Before it hit the nightstand, it lit up again. Same caller ID, same number, same flicker. He swallowed. His heart slammed against his ribs, not in a burst of panic, but in that deep, slow beat that comes with a different kind of fear. The kind that comes when you realize something is not following the rules you understand. It rang again, and this time he answered. He didn't say anything at first, just lifted the phone to his ear and listened. No greeting, no robotic message, just a hiss of static, quiet at first, then thicker, as if someone on the other end was holding their breath in front of the speaker. He almost hung up. Then he heard breathing, slow, uneven, too close. It wasn't how movies made it sound. It wasn't exaggerated or monstrous. It was small, fragile, human. It sounded like him. A hoarse whisper brushed his ear through the static. "Don't get out of bed." He froze. His hand tightened around the phone. The breath, the tone, the way the words formed. It wasn't just similar. It was identical. He recognized the tiny catch in his throat he got when he was nervous. He recognized the way his R's sounded in that region of the country. He recognized his own voice. His mind scrambled for explanations. Prank, recording, deep fake, someone using old audio, someone messing with him. But he didn't remember ever saying those words. And something in the voice sounded wrong, older, tired, like him, but stretched across time. "Who is this?" he whispered before he could stop himself. The breathing hitched. Static crackled. For a moment he thought the call had dropped. Then his own voice came through again, quieter. "It's already in the house." He sat up straight. "What are you talking about? What's in the house?" The static thickened. He could hear tiny distant noises buried in it, like a TV stuck between channels. The whisper came again, faster this time. "Don't put your feet on the floor." His gaze dropped slowly to the darkness at the edge of his bed. The floor was just a strip of black. He couldn't see the hardwood. He couldn't see anything. His mouth went dry. What happens if I do?" The voice didn't answer directly. Instead, it said one sentence in a tone he had never heard himself use before. Flat, hollow, like something drained out all emotion and left only fear. "It's under you." Goosebumps crawled up his arms so fast they almost hurt. He leaned back, pulling his legs up instinctively, heels dragging on the sheet. He kept his eyes on that strip of darkness beside the bed, expecting any second to see a hand or a face or... The call ended. No beep, no fading, just a hard, abrupt disconnect. He listened. Silence. He held his breath and tried to tell himself this was all some twisted joke, but his chest began to ache and he had to let out air. The sound of his own exhale was too loud. He strained his ears. From somewhere downstairs, the house made a noise he hadn't heard before. Not the usual old wood creak, not a pipe settling. Something organic. A slow, wet drag across the floor, like something long and heavy was being pulled across the boards. He stopped breathing again. The phone vibrated in his hand. Another call. Same number, same flicker. He didn't want to answer. Every part of him screamed not to. But fear does strange things. Sometimes it paralyzes you. Sometimes it makes you move. His thumb slid across the screen before he realized he'd decided. The call connected. No ring this time. His own voice whispered, urgent and strained. "Don't talk to it." He shivered. Talk to what? Static crackled so loudly it almost drowned out the words. It knows you picked up. It can hear you now. A shaky inhale. You have to stay quiet. Don't speak to it. Don't answer if it... Something thudded against the floor downstairs, cutting across the sentence. Not a small hit. Heavy, like a person falling, or dropping to their hands and knees. Then came the sound again, the dragging, only this time. It was faster. It was coming toward the stairs. The voice on the other end trembled. It's coming up. Don't get out of bed. Don't make a sound. Don't answer its questions. Why? He whispered back, forgetting the warning instantly. There was the shortest pause. On the other end of the call, his older, broken version seemed to sigh, a sound wrapped in defeat. Because once you speak to it, it knows how to wear you. Before he could ask what that meant, the call cut out again. The dragging reached the bottom of the stairs. The first step creaked. Slowly, carefully, something began to climb. He sat there, knees pulled up to his chest beneath the blanket, phone pressed to his ear even though the call had ended, heart pounding so loudly he was sure whatever was out there could hear it. Step, pause, step, pause. It didn't sound right. The weight shifted wrong. Too much on one leg, then not enough. The pattern reminded him of someone learning how to walk for the first time. Halfway up, it stopped. The silence stretched. For a moment, he thought it had gone back down, and his muscles loosened by a fraction. Then the next step groaned. It kept climbing. At the top of the stairs, the house always made a tiny ticking sound where the railing met the wall. He'd learned that in his first week. Every time he went up or down, it clicked faintly. He heard it now. Tick. Whatever it was standing at the top of the staircase, just around the corner from his bedroom door. The hallway was short, 5, maybe 6 steps from the top of the stairs to his room. He imagined each one as a drawn-out second as something took them. 1, soft footfall, a faint drag. 2, boards complaining under an unfamiliar weight. 3, a whisper of breath against the wall. 4, something knocked lightly against the baseboard like knuckles. 5. It stopped right outside his door. His door wasn't locked. He realized that with a sharp, stabbing jolt. He'd never bothered to lock it. He'd never had a reason to. He listened so closely. His ears hurt. For a full minute, nothing happened. Then, gently, slowly, with the kind of intent that makes your skin crawl, something curled its fingers around the doorknob. He heard the faint squeak of metal turning. He didn't move. Every muscle in his body turned to stone. The knob turned a little more. Then 3 soft knocks shook the wood. Not from knuckles, from something softer, like the blunt end of a palm. He swallowed, throat burning, and for a second forgot every warning he'd just heard. "Who's there?" he whispered. Silence. The knob turned another millimeter. Then his own voice whispered from the other side of the door. Calm, gentle, too gentle. "It's me. Open up." Terror poured down his spine like cold water. His brain knew it wasn't him. It couldn't be. But the part of him wired to recognize familiar voices reacted. It tried to comfort him, to say, "See, it's fine. That's you. That's safe." He didn't answer. He couldn't. Something pressed its weight against the door, very lightly, testing it. He watched the thin outline of the wood in the dark, expecting to see it bow inward. "Open the door," his own voice whispered again. "You don't have to be scared. It's just you." He shook his head slowly. even though no one could see him. The voice on the other side changed. It deepened. Not by much, just slightly, but enough to sound wrong, like playing a recording slowed down by a fraction of a second. Open the door. He squeezed his eyes shut. The phone buzzed in his hand. Another incoming call. This one didn't display a number, just a word. Me. He answered without thinking, desperate for anything that wasn't the thing at his door. The same static, the same broken breathing. His own voice again, this time almost sobbing. Don't look at it. Whatever you do, don't look at its face. I'm not, he started, but stopped when the floorboard right in front of his door creaked. Something leaned close. He could feel it, not see it, not hear it, but feel the presence. Heavy, intent. His voice whispered through the phone, panicked now. It's learning you, it's listening. If you see it, if you answer it, it will know what to be. His mouth moved before his thoughts could catch up. What do you mean? The other him took a shaky breath. I mean that if it can learn your voice and your face, it won't need the door anymore. The line went dead. The doorknob stopped moving. For a long, stretched out moment, there was nothing. Then a sound he will never forget. Something dragging its nails down the door. Slow. Very slow. Not in anger, not in frustration, in curiosity. A patient, exploring sound. It lasted a full 30 seconds before it stopped. Then the footsteps retreated down the hall, down the stairs, across the living room. The house fell silent again. He didn't move until the sky outside his window began to lighten. When he finally stood up, his legs shook so badly he had to hold onto the edge of the bed. He crept to the door and put his ear against it. Nothing. He cracked it open an inch. The hallway was empty. He opened it fully, heart thundering, and stepped out. The paint beside the doorframe was scratched. Not deep, but visible. 4 parallel lines, lower than his own hand height, as if something had pressed its fingers there while listening. Downstairs, everything looked normal. The front door was still locked, the windows closed. No signs of forced entry, no footprints in the thin layer of dust that always gathered in the corners of old houses. Nothing, except when he checked his phone. There were no calls in his history, not at 3 a.m., not around that time at all. But there was one new voicemail. No number, no date, no duration, just labeled unknown. His hand shook as he hit play. The message began with static, then flattened into silence. After a few seconds, his own voice spoke quietly. You answered. You shouldn't have. It doesn't forget. Next time, it won't stay behind the door. The message ended with a sound like breathing through teeth. He didn't go back to bed. He didn't sleep the next night either. He stayed awake until 2:55, sitting in the living room with every light on, the TV on mute, his phone face down on the coffee table. As the minute hand crept closer to the top of the hour, he felt that weight in the air again, the sense that the house was paying attention. At 3 a.m., the phone lit up. He didn't flip it over. He didn't need to. The light bleeding across the table was enough to tell him. It pulsed in a steady rhythm. Calling, calling, calling. The ringing echoed through the room, even though the phone was on silent. He didn't understand that part. He didn't want to. He pressed his palms over his ears and stared straight ahead at the blank TV screen. His own ghostly reflection stared back at him, eyes wide, face pale. For a second, he thought he saw something behind his reflection. Tall, thin, leaning just a little to one side, like its head was too heavy for its neck. The ringing stopped. The shape behind him in the TV vanished. He stood up on numb legs and crossed the room to his router. He unplugged it. Then he powered down the phone. He removed the SIM card and left it on the table. The next day, he bought a cheap prepaid phone from a convenience store. Just calls, texts, no apps. He didn't give the number to anyone. He didn't log into any accounts on it. It was a ghost line. That night, He placed his old smartphone in a drawer, face down, and left the drawer slightly open so he could see if it lit up. He kept the new phone beside his bed, turned off except for emergencies. He lay down fully dressed and waited. At 2:50 a.m., the house began to creak in slow, steady pulses, like it was breathing. The walls ticked, the floor popped. The radiator began to groan even though it wasn't on. At 3 a.m., the drawer glowed. His old phone turned itself on. The faint, leaking light painted a thin line across the floor, right up to the edge of his bed. He watched it, breath shallow. The drawer vibrated, softly, insistently. He didn't touch it. He didn't have to. A second later, the new phone beside him. No SIM, no data, lit up too. One word appeared on the dark background. Me. He stared at it, throat closing. The speaker clicked, even though he hadn't answered. A whisper drifted out, muffled, like coming through a wall. "You can change the number," his own voice said, "but I still know your face." He threw the new phone across the room. It hit the wall, battery popping out, screen cracking. The voice cut off mid-breath. The drawer stopped glowing. For the rest of that night, and many nights after, the house stayed quiet. Too quiet. No footsteps on the stairs, no dragging sounds, no knocks at the door. He almost convinced himself it was over. Almost. What followed wasn't a haunting in the way people think. There were no flying objects, no whispering from vents, no flickering lights. The changes were smaller, subtle, the kind of thing you might miss if you didn't already know something was wrong. He would catch glimpses of himself in places he shouldn't be, reflections that didn't quite match. In the bathroom mirror, his mouth would move a fraction of a second after he'd finished speaking. In the dark screen of his powered-off TV, his reflection's eyes would look slightly to the left, even while he stared straight ahead. In a video call with a co-worker, there was one frame, a single frozen moment in the recording, where his face looked like it had been stretched, like a mask pulled too tight. He started avoiding all reflective surfaces. He kept lights low. He showered with the bathroom mirror covered by a towel. His world shrank down to the space between his bed and his work desk, lit by the glow of one lamp. The calls stopped coming after a while, but the voicemail box filled itself. Messages appeared he hadn't seen before. Some were old, some were new. None had dates. He listened to one only because curiosity overpowered his fear. It was shorter than the first, just 3 words in his own voice, spoken with cracked desperation. It got out. Another message came days later. "I didn't listen. I looked at it. It's wearing me now. If you see me after this, it's not me." He deleted them. They reappeared. The house seemed to lean closer with every passing week. He began to sleep less, eat less, think less. His world became a loop of work, staring, listening, waiting. The thing at the door didn't come back, but he felt something else. Pressure. As if something was building. He decided to leave. It took him too long to reach that point. Fear makes you cling to the familiar, even when the familiar is killing you. But one night, as snow began to fall again outside, faint and soft, he woke up with a feeling like someone had pressed a cold hand over his heart. He sat up in bed and knew, without knowing how, that if he stayed in that house one more week, he wouldn't leave at all. He booked a hotel in town, just for a few nights, he told himself, just to break the pattern. He packed a small bag, clothes, his laptop, toiletries. He left his old phone on the nightstand, still powered off. His new one had been smashed weeks ago. He would get a new number in the morning, he thought. A new phone, new everything. He would sleep somewhere with people on the other side of thin walls, with hotel staff, with cameras in the hallway. Somewhere the silence didn't feel alive. He grabbed his keys, slung the bag over his shoulder, and stepped out into the hallway. The house breathed. He felt it in the walls, a slow, deep inhale that made the plaster seem to expand. He froze halfway across the hall. Behind him, in his bedroom, his old phone powered on by itself. The glow spilled across the floor like a puddle of electric light. He didn't turn around. The ring began, not the sharp digital tone he was used to, a dull, distant toll, like an old bell in a far-off tower. It rang once, twice, 3 times. His car keys felt ice-cold in his hand. He took another step toward the stairs. "Don't go," his own voice whispered from the bedroom doorway. He spun around. There he stood, same height, same build, same clothes, down to the worn t-shirt he'd thrown on before packing, the same tired eyes, the same scar along his jaw he'd gotten in high school. But something in the posture was off. Too still, too straight, like someone had arranged him that way. And the smile, because he was smiling, was wrong. His smile never showed that many teeth. The other him tilted his head slightly, that too wide smile not moving. "You don't have to leave," it said. "It's better if you stay. It's cold out there." His throat closed. He couldn't form words. He remembered the warning. "If you see me after this, it's not me." He took a step back toward the stairs. The other him took a step forward out of the bedroom, bare feet soundless on the hardwood. The house groaned softly around them, as if pleased. "You can't go," the copy said, voice light and almost playful now. "You invited it, remember? You answered, you talked, you listened. That means you're ours." He ran. He stumbled down the stairs, nearly tripping, shoulder slamming into the wall. The house seemed to shift under him, the steps stretching, trying to keep him inside. By the time he hit the ground floor, he was sure the staircase had been 1 step longer than usual. He reached for the front door. The lock stuck for a second, old metal grinding, then gave way. He yanked it open. Snow blew into his face, sharp and bright against the darkness behind him. As he stepped over the threshold, something whispered right by his ear, too close, breathless. "You'll still have to answer." He didn't look back. He checked into a cheap hotel on the main road, a cracked neon sign buzzing above the front desk. The receptionist barely looked up. He handed over ID with shaking hands and lied about having car trouble. The man nodded, took his payment, and slid over a key. Room 212. He rode the elevator up with a woman in a heavy coat who kept glancing at him out of the corner of her eye, probably because he looked half crazed. He tried to smile. She didn't smile back. His room was small but freshly cleaned. The bedspread had a pattern too busy to look at for long. A TV was bolted to the wall across from the bed. A phone sat on the nightstand. An old landline. He stared at it for a long time. He didn't have a mobile now. He told himself the landline was safe. Different kind of system. Old-fashioned. Analog. Not whatever his phone had been. He locked the door. He checked the bathroom. He opened the closet. Empty. 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 For the first time in weeks, he lay down on a bed without staring at a ceiling he recognized. The hum of the air conditioner and the muffled sounds of cars passing outside formed a kind of rough, comforting blanket. He actually fell asleep. He dreamed of nothing. When he woke up, it was dark again. He rolled onto his side to check the time. The digital alarm clock on the nightstand glowed in red numbers. 2:59 a.m. His stomach dropped. The hotel room was too quiet. The air conditioner had turned off at some point. The sounds of cars outside were gone. Even the distant noise of other guests, doors, voices, footsteps, was missing. The room held its breath. He stared at the clock. 3 a.m. The landline phone on the nightstand rang. It was a sharp, old-fashioned sound, not the soft trill of a mobile tone. It cut through the room like a knife. He stared at it, his body refusing to move. The small display on the phone lit up with the call. For a second, it showed incoming call, no ID. Then the letters flickered, shifted, rearranged. Me. He whispered, "No." The phone kept ringing. He didn't want to touch it. He didn't want to go near it. But he also didn't want it to wake up anyone else. Didn't want the sound to spread, to leak under doors and into other rooms. That was the excuse he used. He reached out and picked up the receiver. He didn't say hello. He just held it to his ear and listened. Static, then breathing. His breathing. And underneath it something else. Something heavier. Wetter. Like lungs filled with water. His voice spoke through the line, sounding closer than it ever had. "You left," it said softly. "That was rude." He swallowed. His hand shook so badly the receiver rattled against his ear. "You're not real," he whispered. The static hissed briefly, like a chuckle. "We're more real than you think. We're the piece of you that answered. The one that couldn't look away. The one that wanted to know." A pause. "And now we're the part that gets to decide what you are." He squeezed his eyes shut. "What do you want from me?" The answer came from two places at once, through the phone, and from the dark TV screen in front of him, where his own reflection smiled back a half-second too late. "We want you to listen," the voice said. The line went quiet. The static faded. For a heartbeat, he thought the call had dropped. Then he heard a new sound. Not breathing, not dragging. Something else. A recording. His voice again. Only this time, he recognized the words. They were the ones he was speaking in that very moment. "What do you want from me?" Then the other part, the other voice, overlapping. "We want you to listen." He realized slowly, too slowly, what he was hearing, the conversation he was having, as a voicemail, his future already recorded. "Stop," he whispered. The recording continued anyway. On the line, his own voice screamed. On the TV screen, his reflection didn't move its mouth. The scream was raw, wordless. Behind it, something laughed. Not in a human way. A bubbling, wet sound that kept cutting in and out like a bad signal. He dropped the receiver. It swung on its cord, thudding softly against the side of the nightstand. The scream on the other end didn't stop. The hotel room door, locked with both bolt and chain, made a soft popping sound. The chain slid on its track. He stared at it, frozen. The bolt turned. The door handle moved. Very slowly, the door opened an inch. The hallway outside was completely dark. Hotel hallways are never completely dark. The screaming on the phone cut out mid-breath. A moment later, light flared from the old TV. It snapped on by itself, screen flashing to life in a wash of static. The hotel didn't even offer cable. There was no input, no signal. But the static shifted, forming shapes, grey and white and black, swirling into something like a face. His face, stretched, too many teeth, eyes too wide, pupils too small, skin moving like there was something underneath it, pressing against the inside. The mouth in the TV smiled. He did not. "Now you've seen me," his own warped voice said from the speakers. "Now I know exactly how to be you." His limbs finally unlocked. He grabbed his bag and ran. He didn't remember leaving the room. Only the feeling of the carpets under his shoes in the hallway, the distant clatter of the stairwell door, the blast of cold air as he burst out into the parking lot. Snow swirled around him, thin and gentle, carrying a faint, almost electric smell, like the air before a storm. He didn't look back at the hotel windows. He didn't go back to his house. He got in his car and drove, out of town, past the gas stations and shuttered diners, past the last streetlight, into the black stretch of highway where the only light came from his own headlights. He drove until the clock on the dashboard read 4:32 a.m. Only then did he pull over on the shoulder, kill the engine and sit there, shaking. He told himself it was over. He told himself distance mattered. He told himself houses and hotel rooms and area codes were the issue, that whatever this was tied to places, not people. He told himself a lot of things he didn't believe, and then the car's radio, off the entire drive, crackled to life. No music, no station ID, just his own voice, coming through the speakers as if he'd been recorded sitting right there, right now. I answered a call from my own number at 3 a.m. There was a pause. Static rustled like fabric on the other side of a line. Then the voice continued. And now, I'm not sure who's telling this story anymore. The radio cut out. He didn't turn the car back on. He sat in the dark, engine cold, hands gripping the steering wheel until his fingers ached. He doesn't remember falling asleep, only waking up to grey daylight, a light dusting of snow on the hood, and the taste of copper in his mouth where he'd bitten his tongue in his dreams. The engine started on the first try. He drove to another city. He changed his name on the lease. He got a brand new phone, new number, new everything. For months, nothing happened. He went to work. He came home. He watched TV. He stood in front of mirrors again, carefully, cautiously. His reflection moved when he did. His voice sounded like his voice. Life knit itself back together, stitch by careful stitch. He learned to ignore the occasional shiver passing through him at 2:58 a.m. He learned to tell himself that the silence at 3 a.m. was just that, silence. He kept his ringer off at night. He put his phone in another room. He stopped checking his voicemail altogether. He began to think maybe it had been in his head. Stress, loneliness, a house that already felt wrong. Maybe he'd scared himself into believing. That's how humans survive things that should have broken them. They rewrite, they soften, they forget, until something reminds them. It was almost a year later. He was in his new apartment, sitting at his small kitchen table, scrolling absent-mindedly through his notifications. The sun was setting, orange light spilling across the counter. A neighbor's music drifted through the wall, some upbeat song that didn't match his mood. He wasn't thinking about the house, or the hotel, or the highway. He wasn't thinking about 3 a.m., or old landlines, or static forming a face. He was thinking about what to eat. That's when he noticed the voicemail icon. He had 37 unheard messages. He frowned. Probably spam, robocalls, random junk he'd been ignoring. His thumb hovered. Then he tapped. The list opened. Every message had the same label. Unknown, unknown, unknown. There were no dates. He tapped the first one, static. Then his own voice, distant, frightened, echoing. You listened this far, it said. That means you're still with me. He tapped the second. You understand it, right? His voice asked. You get what it wants? Third. It doesn't care about the house, or the number, or the devices. Those are just doors. Fourth. It wants eyes, ears, attention. The more you give it, the more real it gets. The more of us it can wear. He stopped the message. His chest felt tight. The kitchen seemed smaller, the walls closer. He tapped, the next one with numb fingers. You're already helping it, the voice said gently, by listening, by picturing it, by imagining the call. That's enough. Silence hummed between the words. Then one last line. The story is just another way for it to ring. He dropped the phone on the table. It slid an inch, then stopped, screen facing up. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the phone lit up with an incoming call. The caller ID didn't show a number, didn't show a name. It showed a single word, me. He stared at it, heart pounding so hard it hurt. The ringing wasn't loud. It was almost soft, patient, like it knew, one way or another, he'd eventually pick up. Maybe not tonight, maybe not tomorrow. But one night, his curiosity would win again. He would want to know who, what, why. He didn't answer this time. He walked out of the kitchen, leaving the phone ringing on the table, and sat on the edge of his bed in the next room. He covered his ears. The ringing didn't get louder. but it didn't stop. Eventually, he realized something. The story he was telling, the one you're hearing now, it's just another call, another way for that word, me, to appear somewhere new. Because maybe it can't reach everyone's number, but it can reach their attention. It can ring in their minds. It can knock from the inside. He doesn't know how long he can keep ignoring it. Calls always look for a way through. If you don't pick up, they go to voicemail. If you don't listen, they show up somewhere else. A dream, a screen, a story. He's still trying to pretend he has a choice. He's still trying to believe he can outrun something that knows his face, his voice, his habits, his fear. He's still trying to believe he's the one telling this story. He's not sure that's true anymore. Because somewhere, in a room that looks a lot like yours, a phone is going to light up at 3 a.m. Maybe tonight, maybe in a week, maybe months from now, when you've almost forgotten this. The screen will glow in the dark. You'll be half asleep, or scrolling, or just lying there. You'll hear the vibration on the nightstand. You'll see the caller ID. And for a moment, a tiny, curious, fatal moment, you'll lean closer. You'll squint. You'll see a number, or maybe just a word. Me. And then you'll remember this story. You'll remember him. You'll remember the breathing, the dragging, the knocks at the door, and you'll have to make a choice. Ignore it, or answer. And if you do answer, if you press your phone to your ear and whisper hello, you might hear your own voice telling you not to. You might realize, too late, that you've already picked up a call that started long before your phone rang, because you've been listening to it this whole time. You've been letting it speak through someone else's mouth. You've been letting it knock, softly, gently, patiently, on the edge of your thoughts. The line between his story and your room is thinner than you think, and now that you've stayed until the end, it knows you're there.